Good morning. Could I ask someone in that back row to close that door for us as we call to order the meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada? Ms. Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, your agenda is in order and ready for your approval.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your second item is General Manager's Report, and we do have a few people we'd like to recognize today. Every quarter, we like to recognize our best and brightest operators from both our fixed route system and our paratransit services as part of the RTC's ongoing driver recognition program. These professionals very much are the face of the RTC to our more than 60 million annual riders, and we certainly appreciate everything they do to make us look good. So first, we'd like to start off with our paratransit drivers from First Transit. We'd like to recognize Gustavo Coronel, who has been a paratransit coach operator since March of 2001. Gustavo, if we could ask you to start walking down. We'll give him a little round of applause. Gustavo is a highly experienced and has vast knowledge of his job and displays great care for the well-being and safety of his customers. Oh, thanks. Which is evidenced by his patience, care, and kindness that he demonstrates on a daily basis.
That looks pretty cool. Hey, Gustavo, none of us have one, so
Well, good morning, everybody. This is a challenge for me. The English is not my strong point, okay? I want to appreciate everybody for this. I just want to say I'm really happy to do this job because we really feel we can help people to have a better life or a little bit easier life every day. But also, personally, I feel like every day I can achieve and I can learn a lesson, which is basically have a different perspective of the life and what is really important or relevant and what not. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Huh? Thank you very much.
Today, we are also recognizing Juan Quezada, who became an operator in July of 2001. Juan is very conscientious, makes customer service as well as safety his priority. He was recognized at the March safety meeting for over 20 years of safe driving. If we could say congratulations to him. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to let me be part of this beautiful team, and thanks to everybody. Thanks for recognizing me. So thanks.
From Keolis, our fixed route operator, we'd like to recognize Katie Elliott. During her 21-year transit career, Katie was named Employee of the Month for her safety and training contributions and has been an integral part in the training department. She's also played a significant role with the risk management team, processing accidents and incidents. Katie is a million-miler. Wow. Yeah. We're recognizing her for her safety, training, and customer service. Terrence? Yeah.
Oh boy, are you guys in for it now? I want to say thank you for the award. I'd also like to boil down my customer service in real quick sentences. One is I try to show respect to everybody I meet, whether they deserve it or not. Everybody else on the bus saw how I treated that person, and that says something. Also, try to forgive very easily, apologize, and make sure you're sincere, and ask forgiveness. Make everybody feel that they're important. That's, my husband owns his own business, and I've watched him throughout the years with his customer service. He makes every person that walks in his door feel important, and that means a lot. You get the respect from the customers after that. Thanks.
Katie, that was awesome.
Katie, when you're done driving, I think you need to write a book. From MV, our other fixed route operator, we've got Terrence Rowland, who displays excellent customer service
Yeah, that might
by being aware and having compassion. On one particular trip, a father was trying to make a connection with his 3 small children, and they had a ways to go before reaching the stop. Terrence waited for the man and his children so that they would not have to wait another hour before the next connection. The father thanked him profusely. On-time performance is critical to every operator. However, there are times when we must make sound judgment calls that make sense. Terrence always has an upbeat attitude and a great sense of humor. In the month of December, his overall on-time performance for the 10-minute standard was over 96%.
How you folks doing? I'm sure grateful to grab this award today. I've only had 3 jobs my entire life, and I never ever in my life thought being a bus driver would be my favorite one of all. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terrence. We'd also like today to recognize from our safety and security contractor from Allied Barton, Curtis Tillman. He's a fair enforcement officer and the first ever safety and security, he is the recipient of our very first safety and security recognition. Curtis has been with Allied Barton. Do we have Curtis with us today? Oh, okay. Curtis has been with Allied Barton since August of 2012 and quickly became well-versed in the transit system, providing outstanding customer service in the resort corridor and typically at the Bellagio transit stop, which is an extremely busy stop with diverse customers. His fantastic attitude, helpfulness, and patient demeanor is apparent to anyone who encounters him.
I want to thank everybody for coming out. This is a big surprise for me. I didn't know this was going to happen. I love my job when I was over there at the Bellagio. I just like helping people get to where they needed to go, and it made everything nice. So again, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Yep, that is it. And that concludes your general manager's report.
That was good.
That was nice. Relief after last one. Item number 3 is to receive the Nevada Department of Transportation Director's report.
Thank you. Wanted to mention a few things on the federal funding side. We've talked about before how the transportation bill, MAP 21, expires September 30th, and the importance of Congress acting on a reauthorization of that transportation bill. Got some good news recently on the Senate side that the Environmental and Public Works Committee has a plan that they've discussed with the financing side on the Senate. Would require a general fund transfer or some other revenue enhancement of $16 billion a year to continue the current spending levels for transportation. That includes highways and transit. So a lot of more discussion to happen this summer in Congress, but we're hopeful, and we want them to continue to collaborate on a new transportation bill. The NDOT is initiating letters of support for the impending Tiger Grant applications. I know that RTC has 3 projects that are important to Southern Nevada that they're going to proceed with on the Tiger Grant applications. NDOT is submitting one for our project Neon, and there are other projects throughout the state that are worthy of that type of endorsement. And through our letters of support, we hopeful that in that competitive process that those projects will rank high and Nevada will receive its share of Tiger Grant funding. I know that Interstate 11 is an important project to connectivity, not only to Arizona, but to the ports in Mexico and movement of freight and people on that corridor. NDOT has hired Tetra Tech, which is a local firm with offices in Las Vegas and Reno, to do our assessment of naturally occurring asbestos along that corridor. We anticipate that it's going to take 6 to 7 months to do that sampling and testing, characterization of what they find there, giving us analysis and basically a risk assessment and preparing the construction mitigation measures that we'll incorporate into our project. Our project is different from RTC's in that it's design bid build, meaning that you have 100% design when we open the bids versus the design build process RTC is using. But we're collaborating with RTC's consultant, Kleinfelder, that's doing their assessment, and also with Federal Highway Administration, the Volpe Center, which is their research arm of Federal Highway Administration. They're having weekly conference calls to coordinate what all the parties are seeing on their sampling and testing results. With that delay, we anticipate, though, that we would have to combine the frontage road project that was out for bids that we pulled back in with the mainline construction project, which was anticipated to go out this fall or late summer. So it'll be a few months delay on the actual advertisement of that mainline construction project, but we will be incorporating all the new requirements in the project so the contractor is aware and can price that appropriately in NDOT's contract. And with that, I wanted to mention that NDOT is continuing its meetings with the metropolitan planning organizations, which is RTCs of Southern Nevada and Washoe County, Carson City, and Tahoe. We appreciate the effort of cooperation that we've received from all the members. We want to address those issues about reporting requirements, and hopefully we'll have some mock-ups of some reporting on expenditures from the previous year and looking forward as far as what's going to be obligated for new projects, so that we can show where the money's going. And I know that that's been of particular interest not only to the RTC elected officials at the local level, but also in the legislature. So we'll be continuing work on that with the RTCs. Wanted to thank you for that, Tina. And that's all that I had today to report on. Willing to answer any questions on that issue of Project Neon or Boulder City Bypass I-11.
Comments or questions for Rudy?
Just,
Councilwoman?
thank you, Chairman. Just for clarification, because this impacts what we're doing too, on the asbestos contracts, what's the soonest it could be completed and what's the latest it could be completed?
The soonest, we're thinking in that 6 to 7 months is the soonest, with all the activities, scope of work that we have with our consultant Tetra Tech, and that coordination with Federal Highway Administration and RTC of Southern Nevada. The latest is the worst case scenario is if the Federal Highway Administration determines that we need to conduct a supplemental environmental impact statement. So we currently have an approved EIS, environmental impact statement. If we have to do a supplemental, that requires a lot more process and public meetings, and so that could take up to a year. So we're hopeful that what we find out there, we're from the results that the RTC has through Kleinfelder is found. We're hopeful that we're not going to go into the supplemental EIS requirement. That it'll be just what's called basically an update or a revision of the current document. It doesn't require all that process and as much effort to where it lengthens the process. So we're thinking 6 to 7 months is reasonable.
Commissioner June Kiliani.
Thank you. I had something along those lines. Is there a reason, and maybe it makes sense to have a counterbalance, but is there a reason we didn't just use the same company that RTC did?
Yes, what our concern was, and we went through a process where we actually requested proposals from 4 firms, 3 responded. Kleinfelder was one of the firms that did respond. In the ranking process, Tetra Tech came out on top. However, one of the concerns of the reviewers that I heard was that Kleinfelder has a much larger area to cover on that 12-mile section of Phase 2. So in Phase 1, we were concerned with just capacity of the firm. We know that all the 3 firms that responded were capable of performing the work, but it was just the issue of capacity and making sure that we could achieve our results together and collaborate together on those results.
Okay, and I believe RTC's is taking a couple months, correct? May 23rd?
One of the things I wanted to mention,
go ahead,
Commissioner, was that on the RTC's efforts, because they had a lot of geotechnical work in advance on that 12 miles, they have a lot of core samples that they can test right now, whereas we are looking specifically at our 3-mile section, not as many samples in that section. So we have more of a sampling and testing plan specific to our portion of the Phase 1 project.
And that's because you also have the hill, which is where I believe point 2 was showing up versus the point
Yes.
1, if I'm not mistaken. Has NDOT spoken to the professors or met with them that actually released the initial study?
We have through, because we're dealing with eminent domain issues still on property acquisition, we've indirectly spoken with the professors, and they've been in touch with us and keeping us informed. I think that they're anticipating another article in the media prepared by a student that interviewed the professors. So they're keeping us informed of what's happening media-wise and also technically with that. So definitely have to stay in touch with the professors, but they're going to continue their research as well in the coming years on that area.
And I believe RTC, Fred, you met with them as well, didn't you?
Yes, I actually met with them, the 2 authors of the report. We also met with them and Kleinfelder to go over what they did to get a better understanding of their protocols, and then let them evaluate what we're trying to do in terms of our protocols so that when we get our results, they can clearly interpret our results and mitigation measures that we come with. So we've been in constant dialogue with them.
I appreciate that, because I met with them as well, and they were not, trying to scare anybody, but it is a reality that we have to take into consideration as we look at the whole EIS. Now, on the supplemental side, if RTC, could the feds also require us to have to do a supplemental EIS?
We are on the same document.
So you're all on the same document?
So we're all in it together. That's why we're having the weekly coordination
I think
meetings.
part of what my concern is, I don't want us starting a bridge to nowhere, so to speak. I mean, we have to be careful to marry or collaborate correctly so that we don't get one part built here and then you don't have this interconnectivity. So I would hope that Tetra Tech would move responsibly but more rapidly so that we know if there's going to be a requirement for it. I don't want RTC expending dollars and then we have to hold the project for a year. That's nonsensical, and that's nonsensical to the people that might be bidding on it. And then, Rudy, you didn't do a design build? And that's not doing their...
No, our portion, our scope of work was smaller, so really not a good fit for design build because we had advanced the design so far that it wasn't economical for us to do a design build because our plans were nearly complete by the time that we were going out for advertisement.
But now if you hold it for a while, maybe it might. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the process is any longer. If you're not holding an RFP, even though it might not have fit then, if you've got to move more of a mountain in a different way, maybe it might fit the design build, which then could marry the 2 projects a little bit more quickly.
What we anticipate for the mitigation measures are going to be in line with what Clark County Department of Air Quality already requires. There's a lot more dust suppression, watering. You see it along the Beltway construction projects where those sprinklers are operating in advance, weeks in advance of the excavation. So we'll see that too. It's really with respect to blasting operations, how do you control dust with that's unique. And also having measures in there to monitor the air quality during construction and taking air samples and then testing that for any presence of naturally occurring
Okay,
asbestos.
and who will do that? Because when I talk to air quality, there's kind of a glitch in the law. So the Indoor Air Act doesn't apply, the Outdoor Air Act sort of doesn't. There's some, we monitor, but I was told that we don't technically have,
We anticipate that we
unless
would
it
be
gets
doing that.
airborne, so that's where we would
So
come
we
in.
would hire, part of our process, that NDOT would hire either directly to the contractor or through a separate consultant contract, monitoring during construction
that
as well.
disturbance then.
During the sampling and testing phase and also during construction.
Okay, because I think it's, once it's airborne, and that's what we want to try to
Exactly.
minimize, then air quality does have some jurisdiction. And then how about for RTC? Would you,
We're doing some similar, we're following a similar process where we'd ask the contractors to make sure that they have monitoring during construction. We'd also have an independent oversight consultant on our part, more likely with Kleinfelder overseeing the activities going on
in
during
the first
construction.
place, yeah?
Correct.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Mayor Tobler.
Yeah, I didn't quite hear from staff if they're going out 6 months, and is that best case scenario in your, as far as
That's the best case
asbestos?
scenario for NDOT's contract. Because of the timeline, I think that with the RFP procurement for the RTC's project, you're talking a procurement phase that does take several months anyway, so you don't lose as much time on your construction phase, whereas NDOT's construction phase was impacted on the frontage road project that we had to pull back in and combine with the mainline construction project.
I guess my question though is it is tied to the same federal highway regulation. Does that hold us up?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it would hold us up. And because, as Rudy mentioned, the Federal Highway Administration looks at both phases as one project. When the environmental document was prepared, it was prepared for the entire alignment. And subsequent reevaluations that have been done for the project has been done for both phases. And as when I get to my presentation on I-11, I'm going to get into a little bit more detail on that. But basically, if NDOT delays us too much, it would affect the overall project delivery date. Our strategy moving forward is getting some early results from Tetra Tech sometime around late July, which would give us an indication of what the mitigation measures would be, so that we would be ready to come up with, incorporate our mitigation measures that would align with whatever they come up with. So no matter what we do today, our project schedule will be slightly affected. It depend on which option the board chooses later on. When I get into my presentation, I'll be presenting two options to the board. But there are ways to work around it a little bit to salvage some of our schedule, but yeah, there will be some delays.
Okay. I guess that's somewhat disappointing, Rudy, because, you know, we're going along and I mean, this article came out, what, December? And we're quite a few months later than that. I think, just because I have had phone calls, I think the story did break prematurely as far as alarming the community, and we didn't have all the sampling and the testing and those type of things. But the importance of the project, I would think we would try to move along a little quicker. Because it's one document, I don't see us just building one side and leaving the other side out. Although, if you remember early on, that was Boulder City's concern, that you're going to build the first phase and never do the second, because you're just connecting 515 to 95. Well, the same thing goes with our phase of the project. The efficiency of 93, it just isn't there for the volume of traffic. So even moving forward with ours still creates a better efficiency of bringing the Arizona traffic into the Las Vegas Valley. Of course, we don't want to just do one phase, but the fact that we've known this for a while and it's being pushed out 6 months surprises me that we weren't able to do something quicker, realizing the importance of the project, I guess.
And I wanted to mention that NDOT did use a procurement process where we did ask for proposals, whereas RTC had Kleinfelder already on board as a sub-consultant. So through that process, we did request, because our board needed to approve the contract, we did request that in advance so that we could get, Tetra Tech was ultimately selected, but we could get them more rapidly. But we did have to follow a procurement process that required proposal review and selection and board approval and that led to some of the delay, but definitely in response to Mayor Tobler's comment, we had heard about that in late December, and now we're in April, and we could have shaved off a few months off of that process, but we've definitely come a long ways in determining what we have to do to satisfy the federal requirements for environmental clearance and to have a sufficient number of samples taken to represent the area and do a full assessment and protect the public's health, the workers' health and safety, as well as our contractors. So we think that we are going to have a delay, unfortunately, but we will still work closely with RTC to make sure that our projects are in alignment and that there's not a big gap in time between completion of one phase versus another, that we will be within a reasonable amount of time and having one project done that the public can use once both phases are complete.
Councilman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was NDOT bound by NRS on this going out for the RFP process?
The only option would be like an emergency procedures, and looking at the fact that NDOT has a much smaller portion to construct, I think that the completion of the two projects will still come into pretty close alignment. It's going to take a lot longer to construct a 12-mile section through extensive amounts of cut and fill areas for embankment versus NDOT's portion, which is much smaller. So I still feel that the projects will still kind of complete around the same time. It's just a much longer construction period for the design-build project that RTC is doing compared to NDOT's phase. So although it's taken NDOT a bit longer to do this assessment, I think that they're still going to finish around the same time. It is going to cause a bit of a delay to the project, though, going through this process.
Well, through the chair to the director, that's good news, because I mean, I think we're in full support of what Mayor Tobler just mentioned and trying to get this done as quickly as possible. I think what I'm concerned about is I don't want bureaucracy getting in the way of getting this very important project done. And I think that's kind of my issue. And that's what I'm kind of seeing is the bureaucracy is getting in the way. And I don't know how can this board help you move this quicker? Can we? Can the RTC do anything to help you?
It's pretty much at the phase now where we leave it to those technical experts and the testing and sampling and the review of that assessment to do their work now and come up with the information that the Federal Highway Administration needs to make their determination on whether we need to do a supplemental EIS or not.
All right, so a memo from you to them, hurry every chance you get, is probably in
And
order.
we're pushing our
Thank you, Mr.
consultant to expedite their schedule as well.
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman.
Just one more question for you. Because there's staffing in the north and the south and also in Montana and other states, couldn't we ask them to double up on this contract to expedite it and bring in additional staff and engineers to complete the sampling and expedite the process here? I think that my concern is that there's countless jobs that could come to the market right now to help us during a very difficult recovery, and it's a fragile time in Southern Nevada, and I think that to know that we could get these jobs to the marketplace is really a critical charge for us. And I think if there's something that we could do to help with the process improvement, we'd be happy to work with you. And if there's some way that we could ask the contractor, Tetra Tech, to perhaps bring in additional engineers and shorten the time span, that would be certainly helpful to us.
It's something that we could look into to see if they've maximized their capacity to conduct the work quickly. So we could look into that. Obviously, some things might be constraining them, but I'd be willing to ask our transportation board for more support if it costs more to expedite that process.
To Rudy's defense, I'll help him out here. His contractor originally, Tetra Tech, came back to him originally, told his staff that they would not be able to start until July, and Rudy made it clear that they needed to move that up. And so I do believe you got them to move up, right? April. So they're going to start this month. That's great. Good job.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Then based on that, when do they meet again, your board, Rudy, to be able to give you that flexibility for additional funding just in case
I'm actually asking them for additional funding on Monday. so
Do you
that's
need
when
us
their
to
board
send a
meets.
letter or anything?
No, we still have to do the investigation and discussion with Tetra Tech to see what they can do to shave off some of the time on their schedule, and see if it's worth it to us. Obviously, it's a very important project, and we'd be willing to pay more money.
Right,
It's
to get
just
it done.
letting the board know. I could let them know on Monday that we'd be investigating that.
So you couldn't do a professional what do we call that? 332, the professional services contract on this one? I don't know what, NDOT's sometimes restricted on things, and I just am not that familiar with it, but, so that's why you had to do the RFP component?
Yes, it's mainly following the procurement processes that NDOT has for professional services and making sure that it remains eligible for reimbursement from the federal government.
Okay. Let us know what happens Monday then, I guess.
We will.
Thanks.
Rudy, my turn. We just returned from 4 days in DC, the RTC, and also the Chamber of Commerce. And one of the things that struck our little delegation back there is how nothing gets done in DC. It's amazing. Even the delegation acknowledges that they don't talk, they don't socialize, they don't do anything, nothing gets done. And the message to the local group that was there is, basically, you're on your own. Maybe some Tiger grants, but basically, you're on your own. And I tried to listen to you, answer some of the questions, and I was flashed back to the conversations we were having some of the delegation members. It's very, very frustrating, and I jotted down a couple notes because this is the only time, as our board and you as our member, that we can really drill down on the public record and get things stated that eliminates any innuendo, rumors, they did this or they said that. So I'm going to put you on the stand today a little bit, and hopefully you'll take it in the right context. But the last few years, I think this board, and you've heard some of the comments today, have stated to you constantly, we want to help you help us. We want to do everything we can as an agency and member agencies to support NDOT. And many of us, I think I speak for the board, really don't care what happened in the past. As far as fair share and expenditures and north-south battles, we're concerned about the now, the moving forward. And we've asked you on numerous occasions to buy into that. I think all of us will acknowledge that our staffs have full plates, that we are involved in so many things. We're being asked by our public to do more with less, and I don't think NDOT's different in that sense. But what we need, and this is from my perspective, what we need from NDOT is a champion. We have two projects, Project Neon and I-11, that I'm sure and I hope are at the top of NDOT's list, certainly when it comes to Southern Nevada. You and your agency have everything else that they have to deal with. Projects throughout the state, easements on Rainbow, and all the minutia that public agencies deal with. But we need you or someone in your organization to step up and say, NDOT believes that these two projects are as important as anything that our agency has done in Southern Nevada. I don't have any sense of that. I have no confidence that we're getting the reciprocal support from NDOT. And there's certainly many factors that go into that. With apologies to Aerosmith, this is what I wrote down this morning when you were talking. I think it was circa 1975. It's the same old story, same old song and dance. That just kept coming into my mind when you're talking about this, because we hear this. I heard it 4 years ago, I heard it 2 years ago. Delays and bureaucracy and procurements and this agency and that agency. And I don't know if it's inherent at the state level, that a bureaucracy exists that is far different from the local level, but it's reached the point. This is unbelievable, and what triggers it, Rudy, is I don't care what happens inside your organization. That's your job. And how you prioritize and how the Public Work Board prioritize the inner finance committee, how they set things up. I don't really mind that, but when your projects start adversely impacting our projects, that's where the line has to be drawn, because that's not a partnership. That is your, and I don't want to use the word incompetence, but the perception out there is either the incompetence or the bureaucracy or the lack of passion for what we consider critical projects here now is affecting us. Now we are going to be impacted with our project. And I'll get to the UNLV issue later, because that's another one that all these rumors are out there, and we're going to ask for very specific questions. But I think the board has said in the past that we want you to work with us today moving forward. You know that the stakeholders that have been involved in the last few years with our initiative, we have 183 projects, $700 million, and it's all created to build credibility. That has been a word that's been used constantly for over a year, the credibility of a public agency making commitments to the public that this is what we're asking for. If you allow us to do this, these are the projects we'll do, these are the timelines we'll do them within. And I think that nexus has been one of the few times that people are willing to spend on public projects. Flood control earlier. Over 80% of our dollars go to projects that people see and feel and witness every day. You're an important part of this whole initiative, certainly over the next 2 years, and you're a critical stakeholder, but we need someone from NDOT to step up. We need someone to demonstrate that we're not going to get the same old story, same old song and dance. And I'm frustrated because I've always respected the fact that you're the director, you're working that agency, but when it starts, again, coming over to our side of the fence and adversely impacting us, that's where the line has to be drawn. And if this criticism is unfair, or if I'm dealing with the perception of what's happening over there, then you need to right that wrong. But the perception has really moved into borderline reality. And I just, personally, I can't stand for it, because we need to go elsewhere. We need to go to the governor. We need to go to the Inner Finance. We need to go to the Public Works Board. We need to go elsewhere to get our message received that these projects are critically important. I don't even know what the project of, the status of Project Neon is. I'll save that for another day. I mean, this is why I ask you these questions on the record, so we can go back a month or a year or 2 years and indicate what you've told us you're going to do. This latest go-around, and I'm going to be very specific, this latest go-around, again, we'll get to UNLV in a moment, and I will preface these questions with, I have no problems with UNLV identifying naturally occurring asbestos. No problem with that. And if there are environmental concerns, we should be doing something about it. But when the mayor gets a letter from a constituent asking if they should sell their home, there's something wrong with that. That's UNLV, that's not you. But when did NDOT first find out about the issue?
UNLV sent our public information officer in Las Vegas notice around Thanksgiving. And that notice went to our district engineer, eventually made it up the chain, and there was a realization shortly after the day after Christmas, on the front page article of basically how broadly that UNLV had tested out there, how the alignment of the Boulder City Bypass I-11 project was within that broad area of testing. And in the interest of protecting the public health issue, addressing that, and as far as air quality and not getting this material, if it was out there airborne, that's when we started having discussions about what we needed to do, and eventually asked the board last month, Transportation Board, to approve a contract even prior to the selection and negotiation of the contract, basically to allow us to accelerate
Okay.
the project.
We hear about it, when did RTC first hear about this?
We found out about this in January of this year,
When did the newspaper article come out?
December, late December.
Okay, so that was when, that's the first time we were ever contacted.
Correct.
And someone in NDOT knew about this Thanksgiving. And that's formally. What about informally? Did anybody know about this earlier? So formally Thanksgiving, no one from NDOT or UNLV calls the RTC. It goes up the chain at NDOT, and that takes over a month. It would have been nice if someone realized that, you know, folks, asbestos, this is a dangerous material. This could jeopardize I-11. Do you think we should contact anybody? Do you think we should talk to RTC or the governor or someone? That's the frustration. It's like, well, we're going to move it up the chain, and then, you know, we'll sit down and we'll have weekly meetings to determine what needs to be done. And here we are trying to bust our butts to build the credibility we need that in 2 years will give us the additional dollars to build infrastructure in Southern Nevada. This is far bigger than the bureaucracy at NDOT. This is about the credibility of this agency and building what is needed in Southern Nevada on limited resources. Okay, that at least clears up the fact that you knew about it early. When you issued a procurement, do you need approval as the director? I know locally, and Public Works directors, help me if I'm too far off, we can declare an emergency as far as a contract. Do you have that ability?
Yes.
Or did you have to go to the board?
I didn't go to the board to issue the procurement. I just got with our environmental staff in
And
February.
when was that made?
That was February 14th.
February 14th. And when you declare an emergency, can you just get someone on board and go? And then ask for forgiveness later, like our Public Works directors do?
We have that ability in emergencies.
So why would you have to go through a request for proposals? Can't you, as the director in an emergency, say, Tetra Tech, you are a qualified firm, we need you to start this immediately? Could you have done that?
I could do that in emergency.
Okay. Well, that's where you have to call us up and say, we need your help. We need every one of our elected officials to get on the phone and call your board and say, we support Rudy moving forward. Forget the bureaucracy. We know what we need to do. We need a qualified local firm to get out there and start digging holes. Just hopefully, we can all learn from this and maybe get this going. The 6 to 7 months. Now, so I understand this, and granted, we were out there digging holes, or you were digging rocks, Fred, I know that. But help me understand that we have 12 and a half miles? What should we start saying publicly? What's our RTC component of I-11?
12 and a half miles.
That 12.5, 12.4, I want to get accurate
12.5.
here. 12.5, this is a public record we're making.
12.5.
And NDOT's is I'm not taking about anymore, Rudy. I'm taking.
2.5.
Give me 2.5. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I'll give you 2.75. Now, granted, there may be a little more activity and that you're starting from ground zero, but 12 and a half miles with advanced work, we finished within 4.5 months, maybe 5 months. You're going after 2.75 or thereabouts, and it's going to take 6 to 7 months. Or longer. Hire a second firm. Grab our guys. Let them keep digging. Just let them keep digging on your side. We'll do that, didn't we? Did we not offer? It's unbelievable. And it's indicative. And this is what scares the living daylights out of me, is this is the kind of stuff that the public looks at and says, you got to be kidding me. We're going to give them more of our money if this is what we're going to go through to respect the, you know, I'll get to UNLV. Don't let me forget UNLV because they're not getting off the hook. But, all right. Rudy, there's 6 other questions that I have. I'm going to leave it at that. Bottom line is, you need to let us either help you or you need to get out of our way. I firmly believe that, and I have tremendous respect for you. Tracy has been a blessing for us down here. She really has increased the communication, but it's frustrating. It's like deja vu all over again. We're going back to the old days, and we don't need to. UNLV. And Mayor, you may know more than I, but this is frustrating. We had the opportunity to meet with some representatives from UNLV when we were back in DC, and we asked them about it because I personally have heard so many different versions of this that it's amazing. One of the messages, well, 2 messages that we received. One is professors have great freedom and liberties at the university when it comes to research. I can respect that. The other was, yeah, maybe we handled the communication component of it poorly. That's not good enough. And if this needs to be with board approval or council direction, I'd like to send an official letter to UNLV, not only those involved in the study, but those would be responsible for the research component of it, and make it very transparent. But I'd like some specific questions answered. Namely, what initiated the study? Did someone sit around or stand around the water cooler at UNLV one day and say, hey, you know what? That I-11 project's coming. Let's go check to see if there's asbestos out there. There has to be a nexus or a beginning for this. I'd like to know that, an official statement from UNLV. And when was that decision made? What study area was defined? Who's paying for this? And in a nice way, ask them, did anybody at UNLV consider contacting the RTC as a courtesy, or NDOT? Or Boulder City? And their findings, you know, what is their next step? I think at our meeting they indicated that this is a first step. There'll be a few more steps as far as conclusions and recommendations, because they need to likewise step up and be very transparent about this. The rumors out there are from A to Z, and I don't really know which one to believe. I just want them to state formally and officially for the public record what's going on. And if that, I certainly don't want to be presumptuous, but if that's okay with the board, I'd like that letter sent under the RTC letterhead. Council, would that be all right? Okay. Mayor Tobler.
Yeah, because they didn't just bring into question the I-11 project. What they did is they created and I don't want to say it was a huge panic, but I mean a health issue. And you would think if that were the case, there's proper channels through either the health district or some of these things, instead of just coming out with a article that really didn't give a whole lot of, and it wasn't just Boulder City. It named part of Lake Mead. It named, I think it went through Henderson in the article. It wasn't, I think most of it was Boulder City, so it looked like maybe the I-11 was suspect a little bit there, but you know, it's just throwing out an article without contacting anybody and raising these concerns. And I just think, I agree with you. I agree with sending a letter and trying to find out a little more about why it came out the way it did.
It's irresponsible at best, and I'm sure. So I appreciate that, Mayor. Commissioner?
In your letter to UNLV, I did take the time to meet with the professors because I wanted to make sure that we wouldn't dismiss the issue of potential environmental issues, because that can happen as people want to move projects forward. And I did not get the sense in any way from them that they were out to get anything or stop any property or trying to scare anybody. I really didn't. And at that point, when I met with them, no one from NDOT had contacted them. And so RTC had already set up an appointment with them. So I think there's two-way streets to come and go with regard to that communications. I don't know yet, and maybe this is part of the thing, I don't know what their process is. Academic freedom is very much in a university realm. But I don't know how it got to an article stage. And that's probably where we should flush that part out, is who asked whom and how did that come about, rather than I've sent my study in to somebody to be reviewed versus it became a newspaper article. And I think that's the part that we need to kind of still flush out on that side of it, if that's acceptable. So.
I agree, but let me clarify where I'm coming from. The RTC contacted UNLV, did we not, to ask to set up a meeting to?
Yes.
Good, okay. But UNLV did not do any outreach. And academic freedom aside, everyone supports that. But there's also a civic responsibility with any research project. You can't just go out and start making claims that everybody in Boulder City should pack up and move. I mean, and that's an extremist statement. But the fact that a person felt that way is wrong. And UNLV has an obligation, be it academic, moral, civic. They have an obligation to make sure that their work takes in not just their narrowly defined scope, but also respects and appreciates the impacts or potential impacts of what that research is going to come. So.
Larry?
Mayor, please.
Thank you. I think you bring up a valid point, but also the defense of Rudy just a little bit. I'll go back to the communication aspect, not the UNLV aspect of it, but you know, we do have legislators that I don't think are involved at all with this committee, and maybe it's our responsibility when we do have something of value that we bring them in, because they are our elected officials also and our kind of our lifeline to the state. But I guess I'd ask Rudy, there's 17 counties, and I know the Transportation Board has meetings and things like that, and I know that you can sit here and get browbeat by a board that has frustrations, but is it the Transportation Board that helps you and directs you on what is going on and what should be on your agenda? Is there more politics to this, that maybe we're not attending the board and letting them know what we think is important, and that we're not doing our job, and we should be maybe attending more meetings as members of this committee? What would you suggest that we do to help maybe you?
Tina Quigley represents the RTC of Southern Nevada at every board meeting now, and I don't think that there's any need for the board members to be represented there as well. I think that Tina does a great job of representing the interests of the RTC of Southern Nevada. And this project is very important. I know that even if federal funding were to lapse because of congressional inaction on a transportation bill, it's still at the forefront of NDOT's list of projects. Even if federal funding was not available, we would find a way to fund this project. This one and Project Neon are the two top projects that I see going forward in Southern Nevada that NDOT is the sponsor of.
I don't know that answered my question. I feel that maybe the governor doesn't know, or the board down there doesn't understand the impact of what this has for our valley, and maybe Tina needs some support, or I'm looking for maybe just a little bit more clarification of how do we let them know the importance of this to them and get them to understand that the chairman is probably moving in the right direction for our region, and we need to do a better job of communicating that then.
The governor is well aware of that. They had the signing event last month with Arizona DOT on their future I-11 corridor and the work that they have to do still. The governor and the board members have received probably a bi-monthly briefing either from the project manager, Tony Lorenzi, or from other staff, or from me personally. And they're aware, as I mentioned, that we had this issue and that we were working to hire a consultant to do the work. Definitely, I apologize for the length of time it took for that. There were definitely other options available. I think that in hindsight, had we taken the emergency measures, could have gotten somebody on board a lot quicker or used the RTC's consultant. We felt that in consultation with FHWA and doing our regular procurement process on a rapid track, doing it electronically, giving a limited amount of time for response and just a limited number of qualified firms to propose this on, that we would be on track. We are going to take some effort in investigating what we can do to expedite our consultants' work to analyze and assess the situation out there. Definitely, UNLV put out a press release, and that was an issue that the people that received the press release didn't make the connection to what it would do to the project. Eventually, when it got up to us in Carson City, that connection was clear, and we started taking action and having those discussions with RTC on what the possible impacts of UNLV's research was. I think definitely there were some statements made in the initial, the comparison with Libby, Montana, which is a Superfund site, that we felt was kind of overreaching. We don't think that that's a situation out there. We don't see any linkage to health effects or see that there's increase of mesothelioma or other related health effects. We asked the state health officer about that, and she indicated that there was no statistics that show any kind of linkage between what you see in southern Nevada versus the possibility of this naturally occurring asbestos. And we definitely have a lot more to do to investigate what's out there and with respect to our project, but there's a larger issue with the area that UNLV studied. It has to be investigated further, and so that the public definitely has some concerns, and that they can have their concerns addressed in the larger scope of where this material and sampling area that UNLV conducted their tests in.
Okay, I just would like to go on the record. I think you and Trace, you're fantastic, but if there's something that we can do to help you, I'd make myself available too. Thank you.
I'd like to follow up on something that Rudy said, or your question regarding the NDOT board, the governor's position. Actually, I have been attending Rudy's board meetings for about 5 or 6 months now, and it's been refreshing to see some of the questions that they have been peppering Rudy with related to this project and moving forward as quickly as possible on the geotech contract. I think, Rudy, you probably would agree that they've been putting a lot of pressure on you as well to move as expeditiously as possible in getting this going.
Councilman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And now you got me fired up, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think what you're hearing, Rudy, is this is unacceptable to this board. And I think I want to ask you, what can you do right now, today, to change what's already been done, to expedite this process? What can you do right now, today, to change what you've already started? This months-long process could be up to a year, which is really unacceptable to this board, certainly me. What can you do right now? Can you cancel that contract with Tetra Tech? Can you hire Kleinfelder? What can you do as the director of NDOT to change this today?
We're proceeding with Tetra Tech. I think that they're going to be doing the same work that Kleinfelder is doing for you in sampling and testing. I think there's additional scope that NDOT has them hired for. What I'm going to do is direct staff to talk to Tetra Tech about accelerating their phase of work so that it's 6 to 7 months is less reduced as much as possible, even if they have to pull in other resources from other states to do the sampling and testing.
Okay, because I think through the chair, again, I think you understand the impatience of this board. And I guess I was right. It's the bureaucracy that's gotten in the way of progress, again. We see that throughout history. What about the commissioners' or the chairman's thoughts on just get out of our way? Let us go do it. How would that work? Would that expedite this process any quicker? And I don't want to just take you out of the loop entirely. You are the director of NDOT, and we do need the Nevada Department of Transportation. But what about that option?
I don't see that as expediting the process. I think that we have Tetra Tech on board. They're going to be doing the same thing as Kleinfelder, so that they're going to be doing things together, and we just have to see what the results of what we specifically find on the NDOT Phase 1 project, and then determine what steps to take. We're going to try to expedite Tetra Tech's work as much as possible, and basically renegotiate any additional costs there. And I could mention to the board on Monday that that's what we intend to do, so they can anticipate an amendment to that contract.
And Mr. Chairman, one more to Ms. Quigley. Let us know what we can do. And to you too, Rudy, let us know what we can do. And I don't think there's any more important project in this state than these two projects. Keenly aware of Northern Nevada's issues, transportation needs, and I don't think there's any, you said it, this is on the top of your list, these two projects. And I think that's significant, but I don't think we can sit on our hands and accept the bureaucracy and the challenges that bureaucracy lays out before us. So I would say, through the chair to you, Ms. Quigley, let us know, keep us posted, and to you, Rudy, at the same.
I think it's safe to say that a letter from the chairman saying that they support, the RTC board supports NDOT expediting the contract and basically reducing the amount of time for the services that Tetra Tech is providing to NDOT.
Why don't we prepare that letter? I actually will be attending Rudy's board meeting on Monday, and I can read the letter into record.
Great, thank you. Commissioner June, Councilman? Commissioner
Thank you.
June Kiliani.
That was kind of where I was going to go, because I think that there's a way for us to show the NDOT board, and I have to say the governor and the members on that board have been far more open. I think after the legislative session where we had our north-south issue and finally got a person added on there, and there's been a different perspective, and I concur that Tracy's been very open, and Rudy, you have too. However, I don't think maybe the willingness of this board to move these projects forward is of utmost importance. So I would ask two things. One, that we, as a chair, you have to direct, because we didn't post it for that, but I would use much stronger language. And secondarily, that you reserve the right to declare an emergency at that time if they do not come up with a 2-month shortening in their schedule or something along those lines. And I would ask you to raise that on Monday, and then be prepared to do that, because if Tetra Tech doesn't want to, then maybe you tell them, this is part of my negotiations. Either you get this completed by June, because they're going to start this month, that gives them 2 months, which is kind of in line with where their folks are, and then you collaborate with what we've used from RTC and your folks, or we're going to declare an emergency and you're out of here and we're going to go do something differently, and that might assist you a little bit with your negotiations. I just make that as a suggestion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. And Rudy, the project will get done. I-11's going to get done. If it's a 6-month delay, 18-month delay, your section and our section will get done. That's not my issue. My issue is, again, the credibility of what you do and what we do. A lot of what is on the books over the next 15, 20 years, we won't be the decision makers when those are done, but what today, you and Tracy, Tina Quigley, this board today, we're building a better bureaucracy. We're building a better system of delivering critical infrastructure. And if that's our legacy, if the next 3 to 5 years we can demonstrate through action and not words and not delays and not old-time bureaucracy that this is a new way of doing business in government, that's a pretty good legacy to leave behind. Because the message from DC, and I don't think it's going to change, is locals, state and locals, you're on your own. Don't look to the federal government for traditional funding for highways and roads and arterials and light transit and everything. So it's up to us in state to build that relationship and build that system of delivery that will be sustainable for the next generation. That's my story. Again, with apologies to Aerosmith. All right. Thank you for your patience out there in the audience.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, our next item is to conduct your first citizens' participation period.
This is time set aside for those wishing to speak on a specific agenda item. I would note for the record that the RFP that's been referenced, we will take public comment at that time for that item. I gotta make sure that that's the one. 43. Okay, so that's item 43. Those that have put cards in can certainly wait. Likewise, 44 we'll also take at that time. Mr. Mendoza, you have 2 cards in.
First one is items 28, 30, 32, 36, and 44.
Okay, 44. Do you want to speak on that one now or later? So we'll start with the first request as far as items 28.
The other one that I turned in was just for the final comment period.
Okay, so we'll go with 28, 30, 32, 36.
Oh, so I'm going to go ahead and go forward on 28 and...
Yeah, please.
Okay, all right, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. This time, our comments would like to make a comment, because of my understanding, I guess if I ask a question, I don't get no answers. Anyway, on item number 28, we were reviewing the request by RTC for 6 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee to do paratransit maintenance work on the facilities and vehicles. It is our understanding that the RFP already provides maintenance for the vehicles. So anyway, you might want to raise that. These positions are going to be public employees, and is any RTC federal funds, any federal funds being used for these positions? On item 30, the RTC is requesting an outside legal counsel, which our concern is really, are they going to be involved in when we make a FOIA request? That's really basically our concern, because our understanding is the RTC does have their own attorneys, and when we make a request under the Freedom of Information Act, we go strictly straight to the RTC. So I don't know if that's to put an obstacle. Item 32, there's an amount of $2,700,000 proposed by the RTC for a transit project, I believe. Our concern, and we just want to know if this survey or whatever the proposal is it going to have any impact on public transit, which we are involved in here with ATU 1637. So perhaps you guys might want to raise that issue to the RTC. On item 36, there's an amount of $37,500 annually going to, I believe, it will be the UNLV Police Department, and that will be going to the, I guess, UNLV Transit Center. You have Ally Barden, they're here. We don't understand why the RTC would recommend $37,500 for the UNLV Police Department when they have Ally Barden. And it is my understanding it's for the transit center over there. Now, last, not least, we were hoping that our matter would get resolved regarding item 44, which I just got a text from our attorney, and trying to work a deal that when Veolia left last year, they stole some of our money. And that money belongs to the employees who they left behind. So at this time, I want to go ahead and read what I wrote down and not get out of what I wrote down. So upon the ATU's email to the commissioners last week regarding this item matter, Veolia's attorney immediately called the ATU's attorney to seek resolution to the money ATU was claiming Veolia stole from the bargaining unit employees. In the spirit of cooperation with Veolia, ATU told our legal counsel to try to resolve the grievance that ATU filed when Veolia kept most of the bargaining unit employees' July 2013 PTO. As we stand here before you, Veolia is playing their games with our money that is owed to us. That being said, ATU asks the commissioners to reject the RTC staff's recommendation that the paratransit contract be given to Veolia. Imagine the paratransit employees going through the same BS we are going through right now. And should the commissioners ignore the ATU's request, it only shows that the commissioners really don't care about us, the bargaining unit employees, which we do a great job for the RTC. And hope you do really take into consideration item 44. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Larkin Thomason, a follow-up to the director's report.
For the record, my name is Tracy Larkin Thomason. I'm the Deputy Director for Southern Nevada for the Nevada Department of Transportation. I just wanted to do one follow-up, and many of you have heard this in meetings that I've had with you recently, is that Rudy and I have discussed some of the issues with making sure that we're identifying critical issues here and communicating them more effectively both back to us and to the people that we need to within the department. And as such, I had asked for, and Rudy has given me a position that I'm currently identifying, writing the specifications for, the working minimum standards for, to have another government liaison person located here in Southern Nevada to work with me to help identify critical issues and to help me avoid having things fall through the cracks. Obviously, there is a lot of things going on in Southern Nevada. There's a lot of things going on within the state. And I will be the first one to admit that sometimes my memory of what I think I'm going to be doing that day, by the end of that day, it's no longer on my plate until 2 days later when it's biting me. But anyway, I just wanted to say that it was not in reaction to the conversation today, because hopefully you'll be hearing or seeing an advertisement on it out soon, but that it is something that we recognized back in December and that we've been working on to get that, basically identifying the position. We identified the position that I could utilize in February, and we're currently working on the standards for it now. So hopefully within the next, when the bureaucracy gets through processing it, in the next hopefully 90 days, you'll see an advertisement out for another position here in Southern Nevada. So, will that lighten the mood a little bit?
Did you say bureaucracy?
But that's a small b.
Do you want us to write a letter for you on that one, too?
So, since we can't discuss this portion of public comment, I would ask the general manager to get together to see what we could do in support of that position.
Actually, their staff is already helping me, so thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on a specific posted agenda item? Now is the opportunity. Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close this portion of the public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Your next items, items 5 through 41, constitute your consent agenda and may be taken in one motion.
Motion on the floor for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Then that motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your next item is item number 42, and Assistant General Manager M.J. Maynard will introduce that item. Oh, no, that's me, actually. Well, you can go ahead and have it, since I don't have the backup right now.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, item 42 is to receive information on the May 2014 commission meeting and direct staff accordingly. The regular meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada is scheduled for May 8th, 2014. Nevada Revised Statute 354.596 requires that the RTC set a public hearing for the tentative budget on the third Thursday in May of each year. This year, that date falls on May 15th, 2014. Rather than hold two meetings, it is recommended that the RTC reschedule their May meeting to a new date of May 15th, 2014 to address normal business and conduct a public hearing for the budget. The meeting would be held at the regular place and time at the Clark County Commission Chambers at 8:45 a.m. or at an alternate place and time to be determined by the RTC. If the commission approves this change, notification will be published. And staff recommends approval.
Motion on the floor for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your next item is item number 43, and Assistant General Manager Fred O'Heaney will handle that one.
Thanks, Tina. Item 43 is to approve issuance of the final request for proposals number 14-011A I-11 Boulder City Bypass Phase 2 Design Build Project and evaluation criteria and direct staff accordingly. Mr. Chairman, we've been working on this project over the last few months. We started in the fall of 2013 to develop, select a design build contractor to build the phase 2 of the I-11 project. Just to give everybody a heads up, on the slide right now we show the two phases of the project. Phase 1, which is shown in green, extends from Railroad Pass all the way to US 95. That's shown in green. It's 2.5 miles long. And that's another preview of NDOT. Phase 2, which is another preview of RTC, is depicted in blue, and it extends from US 95 all the way to the Hoover Bypass Bridge. It's a two-step procurement process. Initially, we started with a request for qualifications, and you guys took action sometime in January to select a short list of firms. What we have before you today is the second phase of the project, which is the request for proposals. 3 out of 5 respondents to their statement of qualifications that were done were selected. The firms are listed here: Ames Fisher Joint Venture, which is a joint venture with Ames Construction, Fisher Sand and Gravel, and Atkins as the lead designer. Second is El Dorado Mountain Constructors Joint Venture, which consists of Granite Construction, Skanska USA, and HDR as the lead designer. And the third shortlisted firm was Las Vegas Paving with CA Group as the lead designer. The RFP evaluation criteria consists of 3 parts. The first part is just a screening of a pass-fail screening process, followed by a technical evaluation, which is weighted at 40%, and a price evaluation that is weighted at 60%. Listed here on the screen are the pass-fail evaluation criteria, and the reason for doing this is to make sure that the firms that we selected originally are still intact for the next round, because what we don't want to happen is we select a team based on their submittal and the statement of qualifications and things change. So I'll quickly run through some of the salient ones here. We want to make sure that all the forms and certifications that are required are recertified again, re-signed again, because this project, keep in mind, is funded in part with funds from Federal Highway Administration, and there are several federal certifications that they're obligated to sign. We want to make sure that principal participants submitted in their statements of qualifications are still intact. So for example, we have HDR, Atkins, and CA Group. We want to make sure that they and the key principal participants that they submitted in the SOQs are intact, because we selected them and shortlisted them based on that. The financial conditions that we requested in the SOQs, again, we want to make sure that it's not materially different from what we have today. We also want to make sure that they provide evidence of their capacity to provide bonding and the insurance coverage required in the RFP. There's a guarantee that will also be requesting from the joint ventures to make sure that the parent companies back up the joint ventures. And the proposal bond is something that we require in all our procurements. On the technical evaluation, as I mentioned, is weighted 40%. It involves 20 points for construction, 15 points for the design. Quality management, which involves quality control and quality assurance, is weighted at 15 points. Management approach, which looks at how they coordinate all the different disciplines, both designers and subcontractors on the project, is weighted at 10 points. Geotechnical narrative, 10 points, and the reason why we had that as a separate criteria in this case is as you get to the eastern part of the alignment, the El Dorado Mountains, there's a lot of rock excavation involved and blasting. We have actually spent a lot of time and effort drilling holes, as Chairman Brown said earlier on, looking at rock types, and we finished all that results to the shortlisted firms. We've also asked them to come in for additional supplemental tests that they would want to see. They've actually given that to us, and Kleinfelder is working on that. Beyond that, we'll also be allowing them to go out in the field and do their own independent tests if they so choose. Community relations is an important factor here. We want to be a good partner to Boulder City. There's been a lot of angst about this project and what it might or might not do to this city when it's done. So part of the request here on this project is we've made sure, one, that there's a project office located in Boulder City. And what we refer to that as an integrated project office, which means the designer, the construction firm, RTC staff, and that staff and our construction management team will all be located in one place so that we can better coordinate this project. Not to mention that we also, during the construction period, we'll be able to patronize the businesses in Boulder City. But more importantly, we also want to make sure that they have a PR person on site who can address constituent questions as they come along throughout the construction period. DB on the job training is weighted at 10 points. As I mentioned, this project is funded in part by Federal Highway Administration, and therefore we have to comply with the DB requirements. There's a DB goal of 5% for this project. On the job training, we have that because on all the FRI projects, fuel revenue indexing projects that we have with our member entities, we're asking them to include opportunities for apprenticeship training on the job training so that we can actually train our future workforce in the construction industry. As they get out through this apprenticeship training, they can become journeymen in future. Later on in the presentation, I'll get into a little bit more details in the number of hours required over the 3-year period. Landscape and aesthetics, we have it as 5 points, and that has actually developed an aesthetics corridor plan for the entire project. Part of this project goes through the National Park Service land, and they have very prescriptive requirements as to what they want to see as we come through their lands. In fact, we had a meeting with all 3 shortlisted firms and NPS in one meeting where they did an hour-long presentation to clearly stipulate to them what they would be expecting in terms of the inspections, how they expect the project to look like, because they want to make sure that in the end, whatever we do, it blends with the surrounding environment. And lastly, we have schedule and time. Basically, we're looking at the logic of sequence of their job so that we make sure that we don't impact the public too much. Price evaluation is, as I mentioned earlier, was weighted at 60%. It's a simple formula that we use. We've used this effectively on our CMAR projects. Basically, the lowest price score gets all points, and then the second and third lowest price are prorated based on those points. So looking on the screen, there's a hypothetical example here. Let's assume the lowest bid comes in at $100 million, with the second and third coming in at $120 million, $150 million, respectively. The way we do it is the lowest price cost gets 100 over 100 million times 60, which is 60 points. The second lowest would get 100 over 120 times 60, that'll be 50 points. And then the third lowest price would get 100 over 150 points times 60. That gives them 40 points. We're also going to reserve the right to request best and final offers if the price proposals exceed our budget of $273 million. In January, when you did select the shortlisted firms, you also authorized us to issue a draft RFP to the shortlisted firms and engage them to get feedback on the draft document. We've done that. We've had several meetings with them. As a group, we've had meetings with them on one-on-one confidential meetings that we've had with them. And they've suggested some changes in their RFP document that have actually been incorporated in the documents that are included in your backup. But I want to go over a few key provisions in the RFP that could affect our pricing. The first and foremost is insurance coverages. We met with insurance underwriters and risk management consultants to look at some of the suggestions that had been made by the shortlisted firms, to look at what we had in the RFP and what they were suggesting. So we listened and made some changes. Now, our insurance consultants made it clear we don't want you to be overinsured or underinsured, because when you're overinsured, it's going to cost us whatever cost will be passed on to us. If we're underinsured, we have exposure. So based on the input, what we suggested, for example, the first one being workers' compensation and employees' liability insurance, we had $2 million in the RFP. They being the shortlisted firms, suggested it to be reduced to 1 million, and our recommendation is to go with 1 million. Professional liability insurance for the design firms, we had it at $15 million. They were asked to be dropped to 10 million, and we agree with that, and our recommendation is $10 million. Federal employees liability insurance, we had it in the document. We should have had it in any way, because there are no federal employees on this project, so we've deleted that. Liquidated damages is another area to make sure that they finish the project on time. We had it at $32,000 per day in the document, and we also had the caps on LD, which means the maximum amount of LDs that they would incur was 5% of the price. Based on discussions we had internally as well as discussions with our risk management consultants, we agreed to reduce the caps on LDs to 3%. However, we were going to keep our original recommendation of $32,000 per day as opposed to the $15,000 to $20,000 per day that they had requested. Design submittal approval timeline, we had it at 20 days in their document. Originally, before we issued the RFP, we had it at 14 days, but we also wanted to make sure that because we have third-party contracts in place and partners in place, we didn't want to overburden them with the review process, so we increased that to 20 days. However, we heard it from all three shortlisted firms that we need to reduce it to 10 to 15 days because this is a design-build project and they need fast turnaround. So what we agreed to do was concurrent design reviews. For example, NDOT, when we submit documents to NDOT and us, we'll have concurrent reviews. And basically what we agreed to was if at the end of the period we don't get comments from NDOT or any of the third parties, we move on so that we can keep the schedule. On the job training and apprenticeship hours, over the 3-year period, we are requiring original 50,000 hours. We heard from the teams to reduce that to 25,000 to 42,000 hours. We've revised that to 40,000 hours over the 3-year period. And price, again, as I mentioned, was 60% weighted. One of the teams suggested we reduce that by 10% to 50%. Another suggested that we increase it by 10% to 70%, and the other was neutral. So recommendation now stands at 60%. Asbestos, we've talked about that a lot this morning. I don't know how much I want to talk about it, but it's important because it affects the schedule moving on. We started a process in collecting 200 plus samples. We expect to get our results sometime in May. The preliminary results will come in around May 11th, with the final results coming in around May 23rd. However, as we had during the public comment period, Rudy's session, FHWA looks at this project as one. So even though we have 2 phases, they would always look at this as project, no matter what we do. And hence, the dilemma that we have now. Now, we will be done sometime in May. Rudy's project is going to be a few months behind. However, we have been pushing them. We've had a lot of weekly meetings with them. And as of last Tuesday, Tetra Tech indicated that they would try and get us some preliminary results on their sampling by end of July. So if we can even squeeze that a little bit better, I think we can work the schedules. However, there is a clear delay on this because of that. And that leads to the next slide, which is our schedule. Because we want to, first of all, because FHWA is going to make, insisting that we have both results in place and provide a comprehensive results report to the FHWA for their sign-off, we still have to get NDOT's documentation to incorporate in our document. That's one. Secondly, we also want to make sure that the mitigation measures that we develop are consistent with what NDOT does on their face, on the face of the project. Because what you don't want to happen is you have the same concentration of asbestos along the same alignment, same conditions, but have different mitigation measures. And then thirdly, we also want to make sure that we have the mitigation measures included as an addendum to the RFP document so that the potential design builders would know what the mitigation measures are, have them price that appropriately, and include that in their proposal prior to receipt of their proposals. No offense to them, but I suspect if they get this after the fact, we'll have a huge change order on our hand. And we'd rather do it upfront whilst there's price competition. So where does that lead us? We have two options that the board can consider. One option is to move forward as planned on the RFP so that we can release the RFP as planned. However, extend the proposal due date, which was originally scheduled for June 30th to around August 25th. That's option one. Option two is extend the draft RFP process all the way through July, which would mean that we'll get their proposals from the shortlisted firms in October. Now, we did independently check with all three shortlisted firms to get their opinion, and independently, all of them came back saying that they would rather have option one to keep the momentum going. And I think part of it is because if at some point we run into problems, we can always adjust our schedule. If we go with option two and nothing happens, we've already lost a lot of time for no reason. So those are the two options on the table. And lastly, FHWA is also required to approve the RFP prior to issuance, and they did in fact approve that. And so we have an approval signed by the administrator of FHWA to move forward with the RFP. Restrictions on lobby and RTC contracts, this is more for the board members. Depending on which option we select will dictate when the cone of silence for the board members will start. If you go with option one, the cone of silence will start today. If you go with option two, the cone of silence will start on July 8th. And that completes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions that the board may have.
Dr. Fred, what is the anticipated time that once NDOT and RTC's asbestos studies are done and we turn those in, what's the turnaround time from?
In talking to FH, it all depends on the concentrations that we discover in the field. Assuming everything comes in not too high, what FHWA is telling us that all that it will require is a reevaluation, which means it's a simple documentation of what we found and the mitigation measures that we want them to do. For example, dust control, additional watering. They told us they'll have a 30-day turnaround. However, if it turns out that the concentration comes in exceedingly high, which we don't expect, that would trigger a supplemental EIS, and we'll have to deal with that at a later date.
Thank you. Councilman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a simple question. Your rating at 60/40, when I think, Rudy, am I correct that Neon is doing 70/30? Why did we go 60/40 instead of 70/30?
We wanted to make sure, and I think part of it involves the geotechnical issues that we have on the eastern part of the alignment. We don't want one of the teams to come in and lowball this thing too much. And so if you make price too high, there's that potential. If you make it too low, you have the reverse situation. So we felt the sweet spot was around 60/40. If you look at Project Neon, it's in an urbanized area. They're actually working on existing facilities as opposed to where we are in the greenfield situation. But we have a lot of unknowns because anytime you deal with rock cuts, things could happen. We don't know. So we felt 60/40 was a sweet spot that would work. And like I said, one of the teams came in and said, you know, lower it, as I said, increase it, and that was neutral. So if the board wants to change it, we're open to that. If they want to leave it as is, we're fine with that as well.
Just curious. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Lee.
Thank you very much. On the best value determination, when I look at this, I don't understand, maybe it's just because I'm not as sophisticated yet here, but like 10 points for community relations and some of these things that you guys put in there that just seem to be something that affects the price more than needs to be. I mean, what do you expect out of community relations that the newspaper can't already give them or something? I don't understand that issue. And then I have a second question.
Sure. Community relations involves not only having discussions with the community, but also making sure that we provide information to the media, we provide information to the city council, and address any concerns that the city has. Because part of the concerns we've had over the last couple of years that we've been working on the project, the city has made it very clear that we want to make sure that whoever gets this project is keeping us informed as much as possible. Again, these were points that we put in there. The board has discretion at this point to make any adjustments as you see fit.
Okay. Yeah, that one perplexes me. The other one was from a financial point of view, with these different percentages and the way they move around with all these 5 and 10 and 20%. Then it seems possible that the highest bidder could actually get this job over two people who bid lower. Is that correct? It could turn out this way, that so now we make a financial decision based upon some numbers, but generally speaking, it's going to be a more expensive job?
Yeah, it's possible. It depends on how that highest bidder scores on the technical side. So if they come in high, which means if you look at the formula that I showed earlier on, they get the lowest points in price. However, if it turns out that technically the overly superior, they submitted outstanding documentation or proposals, it's quite conceivable that that could happen.
I could just imagine that's going to happen, to be creative to get all those points, that they're going to assess that into their bid, and then they're going to say, well, they didn't hit that number, but we did, and now we pay quite a bit more. I question the use of taxpayers' money if we don't get the best value for their efforts out there as they contribute to our society. We owe them a value.
Correct. And hence the reason why in one of my slides, I also said reserve the right to request best and final offer. So if they come in and they go in too high, we have that right to go in and say, look, we had a budget of 273 million. You guys are telling us it's 300 million, for example. We have the right to request them best and final offers and have them come back to us. And we've done that in the past.
So let me, maybe I'm not understanding what you have certain rights to make determinations on numbers that contractors gave you, and the other people could say, well, if we'd have known that, we'd have bid that way too.
No, when we do the best and final offers, all three firms would be required to resubmit on the best and final offers. It's not only the number one firm. So it's an even playing field when we go to that level of request.
One of the advantages of doing a design build versus doing a low bid is that you do get the flexibility to truly get the best value, to get the technical expertise with it.
I agree with that. I just sometimes wonder if we get so sophisticated that we end up getting good bids that just aren't pretty enough. And that's what concerns me. Thank you very much, though.
Mayor Tobler.
Yeah, on just community relations, I think that is important. If the board wants to tweak that a little bit, I would be okay with that. But we have, there's a lot of excess material that's going to be hauled out of there, or it could be put on an area within our city limits. And those are going through the main roads of Boulder City. We want to be able to have a good communication process with whoever's building it. I have to tell you that a couple of the contractors that have met with me, they were all for this. And so I think it's going to be the biggest project Boulder's ever had to deal with. And Rudy, you remember just widening the 93. And that got off to kind of a rough start, but then it mellowed out when we all started to communicate a little better. And they actually had a PR person there from NDOT. And it was very helpful from that point on. And I think that project really went pretty smoothly, except for the first few days. But I do think that's important. This will have a lot of major impacts. I know that we need this project. We're not trying to say we don't want any impacts when of course we're going to have some coming through the town. And so I think it is an important aspect. If that wants to be, if you want to change or tweak some of that, I'm okay with that. There are a lot of features to this project, just the technical features and engineerings that I think do require a real look at I would agree with the 60/40, just because of a lot of the uniqueness in the terrain and where they're going through. I don't know if it ought to just be based on price. And I'm not an expert in this area. I'll be the first to admit that, but I do see a need maybe to at least keep that technical criteria there to make sure we have the right things being looked at when they're bidding on the project.
Commissioner June Kiliani?
Thank you. Couple things on page 4, you have a typo on guarantee, so just for future reference, you might want to fix that. The community relations is very key in something on this project size. I would just be curious, do you have any requirements for the company's so many number of public hearings with the folks affected? How to work with making sure the businesses still have access during those times? Do we call that out, or do we expect them to call that out so then you can judge it based on how thorough they are?
We have a few, we're going to leave it to them to come up as part of their submitting a public outreach plan, which would actually tell us how they want to deal with these issues. We've set certain parameters for them, but they would have to submit their plans.
Okay. I hope we don't get into billboards and all that stuff, but there are ways to truly penetrate. And I would use the flood district as a requirement, that a certain number of public hearings, certain number, but if we don't have that, I guess they'll have to figure out what's the best way or approach to do it, but I think that'll call it out. DBE and on-the-job training, that's apprenticeship programming. What percentages of what? I mean, I wouldn't want a 1 or 2% DBE and all the rest at apprenticeship. So how does that 10 points get?
Right now, we have them as 50-50, which means
Okay.
5 points. Even though they are grouped together, 5 points will go towards DBE, 5 points will go to OJT.
That's my.
Now, if you prefer, we can still split them as 2 separate line items, which is fine.
I hear from the committee. I wasn't sure exactly on that part of it. And then the schedule and time to me would be very, very key to make sure you don't have lots of changeover orders and cost overruns. But maybe the 5% points makes sense because it's still a design build and you do have a little bit more way to move them along. So whatever the mayor wants, I mean, the majority of effect is up in that area, but it's also anybody that uses that route that will be impacted, the drivers, trucks that'll be coming and going, and those things as well. So anyway, so I'm okay actually with the 60-40. So that's kind of where I was. I think the insurance makes sense to go on the lesser amount because you can still get your coverage, and I feel a little bit more comfortable on 60-40 based on Mayor Lee's questions because you still have that flexibility. It's not bid shopping because you have all 3 of them come back in and you sit down with them and say, this is where we need you to really flush your dollars then, as far as that's concerned. So I think that makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So if the board is ready, we're asking that you approve the RFP, the evaluation criteria, assuming there are no changes to the criteria. Let us know which option you prefer. If it's option 1, let us know so that we move forward with option 1 or 2.
Mr. Chair.
And with those recommendations that you highlighted as far as they're in, can you go back a couple slides?
Which was what option 1? I'm not finding it.
Option 1 is going out now. New guards go out now, but waiting for the addendum on asbestos.
Okay. So option 1, just to clarify, would mean we issue the RFP as originally planned and have the proposals due on August 25th as opposed to June 30th. That's the same option that all 3 shortlisted firms are independently preferred. Option 2 is where we extend the draft RFP process through July and have the proposals due back to us in October.
Okay, that's option 1, and then that one slide, you had a couple issues that you requested. They gave you feedback, and you had recommendations.
Oh, okay.
Is that also included in your recommendation?
Yeah, all of those.
All of these as posted or
As
provided
listed.
today?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So we're looking for option 1 and the remainder of the recommendations per Dr. O'Haney. Motion?
I would make that motion, but I just have one question. I was originally leaning towards the July go out and then push out, but if we've got the flexibility, if NDOT moves forward a little bit more quickly, I just don't want to get stuck building something that doesn't ever get finished and you don't have that connectivity. So I think staff feels comfortable with that part of it.
Option one gives you that flexibility. If for some reason something happens during this period, we can always issue an addendum
Okay.
to adjust.
Based on mitigation or anything else.
Yes.
So that would be my motion, Mr. Chair.
And I
include-
apologize,
that's-
Commissioner, before you
Yeah.
make that motion, I actually told the folks to put their cards in.
Oh, that's right.
To
You would
see.
talk, yes. So
And
my
here
mo-
we
just to
are, not
clarify-
allowing them to speak.
So to clarify my motion, it's option one with the items listed on page 6 under the key revisions that was noted by staff.
Sure. And we've made some minor tweaks since we submitted this item, and all of that be part of the final RFP.
I do apologize. The first one that requested to speak on this item was Jim Austin.
Morning. Thank you, Chairman Brown and Commissioners. I've brought a written text of what I'll be talking about this morning. A lot of what's on the written side of it has already been discussed here this morning. I guess I would like to start off with, I'm Jim Austin with Ames Construction. I'm the project manager for the Ames-Fisher joint venture on the I-11 project. I'd like to start off with complimenting the RTC and the process so far. Fred O'Haney and his team have done a great job under Ms. Quigley's leadership. They've been very responsive, very forthright, and very good to work with so far. Our biggest concern of what's been discussed so far is the scoring, the 60-40 scoring in particular. I've discussed it with many of you already, and I'd like to just probably describe why we feel as though a 70-30 scoring criteria, evaluation criteria would be important. First, it focuses the 3 shortlisted bidders on an efficient design and cost. It prohibits any subjectivity or narrows any subjectivity, and low bidder is the best value on the project. As we discussed earlier, for instance, a $15 million difference in the bid could potentially be overcome by a higher ranking in the 40% side of things on the technical score of it. This would take away money from future projects and anything going forward, which I know is important to all of you. The other item that I'd like to discuss, well, of course, we would like to see the scoring go to maybe a 65-35 or a 70-30, but we certainly don't want to see it slip backwards to a 50-50. The other suggestion that we would have is to have a little bit more emphasis on time. Time on the project is critical, and we're not used to seeing such a slight weighting on the time of a project. Mayor Tobler, you mentioned the impact on the project. Well, time has a big impact on the project. The length of duration out there is important. It's less impact to the city of Boulder City and all the commuters going down 95 or in Boulder City. So the other impact that we'd like to see change a little bit, maybe a little bit more weighting on, is the time factor. Time is money. I mean, the more we shorten the time factor on the job, the better cost we're going to get.
Any questions for Mr. Austin? And I do apologize, I should have brought you up earlier. Dr. O'Haney, Mayor Tobler.
Well, really, it's for staff. I'm just curious on the timing on the 5%. We also have the liquidated damages. Is that for delays in the project, correct? So that really ties them to a date certain?
Correct.
So I don't know if it...
The way this thing is... What?
I'm not sure raising the 5% if it means a whole lot if we have it set with liquidated damages.
Yeah, we have LDs, as you mentioned. We also told all 3. Right now, the project is over 3 years, which we feel is very adequate for a project of this type. What we're allowing them, since this is a design build, they would actually come in and tell us what their schedule is, and we're going to hold you to that. And so I think leaving the points as is fine. However, it's the board's discretion to decide if the board wants to change that.
Changing the value of
The points,
time?
in terms of, right now it's shown as 5 points. Can I get back to the slides? Okay. Yes, right now we have that as 5 points. So if the board chooses to increase that, then we have to take it from somewhere else.
If I may explain then schedule and time, what are the differences there?
Time is just the duration. Schedule is the logic on how they intend to sequence the job to minimize impacts. For example, maintenance of traffic. We have two interchanges on the project. We have US 95 as well as the Nevada interchange. We want to make sure that there's some logic and reasonableness to that. Because we have, since it's over a 3-year period, we have a lot of holidays in between. This past month, because of March Madness, we had a lot of traffic issues coming in. What we want to make sure is they sequence the job with some logic so that during those holidays, during those special events, we do not impact the driving public too much. That's the reason why we had scheduling in there. It's more of the logic of how they sequence the job.
Your Honor, are you suggesting that we add more points to the schedule and time?
I would be open to it, but I think the only area you could take from would be from community relations and moving it down to schedule and time. I think both those items are important for Boulder City, but from hearing from the companies that are looking at it, I think they have a strong commitment to working with the community regardless. But your scheduling is important because there's a lot of things that people don't understand, like March Madness. No one understands the impacts, and they come out and they're like, why are all these cars out here? And they don't expect it, so.
And we'll be fine with that
I
approach
would go with
as well.
staff, really, what you recommend, but I think if you start to arrange the points, the only area you could really probably give is community relations.
That's fine.
Yeah, do that.
So if you want to change that, maybe one suggestion would be increasing the schedule and time to maybe 10 points, and then decreasing community relations to 5 points, if you want to go that route.
Can I say something, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chair?
Please, Councilman.
Thank you. I'm a firm believer in not micromanaging your staff, Ms. Quigley, and we've had issues in previous RFPs going out. I'm a little reluctant to play around with this, and I'm not going to deny what you just said or in the letter you just presented to us. I think you're on spot, but I think everyone looking at this project knew what they were getting into. If I'm bidding this project, I know what the criteria is going to be. So I agree with you, but you knew what this was going to be when you walked into it, and everybody on the short list. So, in the recommendations from the three, one wanted to, they want to change it, one said the other way, and then one was neutral about it. So I'm firm with where we're at. I honestly am, Mayor, and I'm going to rely on you, Mayor. Because this impacts you the most, in my opinion. So.
Once again, those two items I think are related. I think that benefits Boulder City when you look at the scheduling and timing, and as well as community relations. So I think those are both important to us. You're really not changing the priority out of there. If you want to do 7.5, 7.5, I don't know if that makes it more difficult. That's something that Commissioner June Giuliani said. So, yeah.
I would amend my motion to make it 7.5 and 7.5, and that way between, does Greg want to? Split the baby. Split the baby.
Commissioner, hold on just for a second.
Okay.
When the attorney gets up out of his chair, walks over to staff.
We take notice, okay.
We gotta-
I didn't, sorry, Greg. If you want, we could do 7.5 for community relations, 7.5 for schedule and time, because I do agree they're interlinked, because if you don't turn it out in time, you're going to have community relations issues in the long run. So I would make that as an amendment to my motion.
Council's going to weigh in.
Mr. Council.
Thank you for recognizing that I got up when we were going to be doing some math. I think that the way that this is presently broken down in terms of the topics, there's a natural interrelationship between the concept of schedule and time and construction narrative. And so the point being is that we would expect these bidders to really interrelate and integrate these concepts. So from a 2-point perspective and splitting the hairs, I think that we are creating more confusion than necessary. When we look at this in the aggregate, what we're expecting from the bidders is something that makes sense, and the definition of value here is ultimately going to be who can get this design build project done in a harmonious way. Schedule and time is covered not only in that section, but again in the construction narrative, and again, frankly, in the liquidated damages clauses, which create an expectation that making your time count is important to us as the RTC and the community. So I do think that there's a natural relationship between all of these things, and at this point, I would defer to staff in terms of how it's broken up.
Okay, well, knowing that and an attorney actually made sense, I'll withdraw my amendment with the caveat that the attorney made sense. No, I think you're right. We're going to create more problems than we really want to have happen. I think everybody that's going to bid knows what is expected. So I would make my motion that option one with the qualifiers on that other page with regard to the hours and so on and so forth, with the 60/40. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Everybody comfortable with that motion? All right, on the floor, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, members of the commission. Your next item is item number 44, and Assistant General Manager MJ Maynard will handle that.
Thank you. Item 44 is to receive a recommendation from the Evaluation Committee to select and award contract number 13-036, Americans with Disabilities Act Paratransit Services to Veolia Transportation from the date of notice to proceed through August 2nd, 2019, with one 3-year option and one 2-year option, and authorize the chairman to sign the contract or take other action as deemed appropriate. With your approval at our April 2013 board meeting, we issued the ADA Paratransit Services RFP. You approved a 2-step process, with step 1 based on qualifications and step 2 based on qualifications and pricing. In the second step, the proposers were evaluated for their technical abilities, with a focus on the proposed management team and customer service approach, which was evaluated at 50%, with the remaining 50% evaluation consisting of their fixed and variable rate proposals. We had an evaluation panel of 4 internal and 3 external reviewers, so 4 RTC staff and 3 non-RTC staff. The 4 firms that proceeded to the second step were First Transit, MV Transportation, Kills Transit America, and Veolia Transportation. Veolia ranked number 1 in both the technical and price category, with a combined total score of 96.41. As you can see, Veolia is the low bid at $408,873,319, and staff does recommend approval.
Does that conclude your presentation?
It concludes my presentation, yes.
Okay. Open it up for questions from the board, and then I will ask those that filled out a card to come up and offer their comments or questions. Councilman Ross. I'm
Thank you,
sorry.
Mr. Chairman. Councilwoman Tarkanian apologizes for her absence at this meeting today, as we all know that Jerry Tarkanian is in the hospital getting some help. She did want me to ask some questions, however, about the divide between the number two low bidder in regards. Can you address that? It's about 10%, I believe, and I want to know the same thing. So our questions are kind of the same. Can you address that?
Yes. Actually, Councilman Ross, we had a third-party external audit done that vetted these numbers, and it was the McGladrey accounting firm. They are here today to answer questions that you may have.
Please. Do we have the representative here?
And Mr. Chair, I think it's important that this is a sizable contract, of course, as we only hand out sizable contracts at this level. But I think it's important for those that responded and for the benefit of the public if we get this report. So I appreciate that.
If you would just introduce yourself, put your name on the record.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, my name is John Croy, Director of Construction Risk Advisory Services from McGladrey LLP.
Then I guess I'll ask through the chair. Can you categorize or kind of tell us how you did an audit of all this? Is that what occurred?
Yes,
MJ?
yeah, we were engaged to make a determination with respect to the reasonableness of the pricing submitted in accordance with the RFP. So what we did in determining the reasonableness was we looked at the overall pricing submitted. We evaluated the fixed and variable cost. There was also pricing structure that was submitted by the respondents to the RFP that identified the elements or services to be provided. So we went in and evaluated those prices based on those elements that were required in the RFP and came to the determination that the price submitted was reasonable.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My questions have been answered.
Commissioner June Kiliani.
So it's my understanding that a decision was made by Veolia to not take a profit over a period of time. Is that correct?
I'm not sure we could direct that question to the
Maybe
gentleman.
that doesn't go to McGladrey.
That may
but
be-
wait there just.
Yeah, each proposer submitted a certain percentage for profit and overhead, and Veolia was the lower
Okay.
proposer in.
Okay,
in
it
that
was lower, it
category.
wasn't a zero
That's
as far
correct.
as that's concerned. Okay, and then, because we just got to make sure that as we deal with the employees, I don't want anybody getting, price is the price, and I don't want it to be at the expense of them, and that's something that we've been trying to monitor through all these contracts, and so.
And it was clearly stated in the submittals that that was not the case.
Okay, and then it looks like okay, so they scored, Veolia scored first in technical and in pricing. First Transit scored second highest second highest in the technical, correct? Because I think the documentation I had originally had the numbers flipped.
So overall, First Transit came in number 2.
Okay.
First Transit was number 3 in technical, but overall, they came in right behind Veolia.
Right behind, okay. And then the difference in pricing appears to be about 7 million in the base year, but as you go out, because of probably that percentage changing, it increases upwards to about 29 million. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. And when you look at reasonableness, Mr. McGladrey, I've really had that attached to my name ever, but what do you look at for reasonableness in pricing?
We want to make sure that a prudent businessman
Or woman.
represents what a prudent business person would
Thank
pay
you.
for at the end of the day. Sorry about that.
That's
My
okay.
apologies. So in doing that, we went through the exercise of comparing and analyzing each one of those pricing elements that was provided. And that would determine whether overall the price is reasonable.
Okay, so somebody couldn't fudge a number, well, they could try to, but I mean, lowball in one place, you would catch that in your analysis if it just was not a reasonable person or a prudent person's way of doing business.
Yeah, we take that into consideration, but it's the overall reasonableness of the price that was submitted that we come to our determination upon.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you for coming up. All right, there are some cards that have been submitted. And let's see, requested before Joe, requested after Randy. Randy's going first. So Randy Botzet, B-O-T-Z-E-T. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Randy Botzett, Vice President and Business Agent of Teamsters Local 631 here in Las Vegas. We're affiliated with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and this is Joe Sampson, my colleague and business agent of Teamsters Local 631. We represent the busing industry and the paratransit division and the rack facilities at the airport and the Rent-A-Center. So we're here today to represent our members at the paratransit division with some concerns, and we are here to protect the members of our contract through this process. We have been very proactive in the collective bargaining agreement with First Transit, and we will continue to be proactive with the new contractor as well. We'll set up some transition meetings and some negotiations to protect these members and their best interests through this transition. One thing I'd like to put on record is that we need to have a better plan in place through the integration process of the entering and exit of the RTC RP award. We leave a lot of people in the dark. We want to protect our employees in this industry, and this process, I don't really believe, well, basically they're left in the dark through this transition. I think we need to do something to either give them some brief meetings or some updates on what's going on with it. We'd take any open proposals on how to adjust or do something for them during this process. And basically that comes through your collective bargaining, but I believe the RTC, through a third-party contract, we should be able to come up with something to protect these individuals by going through this process when we have the RFP award going on. Because basically what it breaks down to is these guys are left in the dark, they're left hanging, they don't know what's coming up, if they have to reapply for their jobs, and all this needs to be formatted. And I think, you know, this is one of these, I guess, agenda items this should be coming up with. We need to protect them, labor and people. They work very hard in this industry. It takes a very special individual to maintain and operate in this workplace environment. And when you find such individuals, we should make every effort to maintain that longevity. Of such individuals for the benefit of all parties involved, especially for the customer service and the welfare of this industry. With that, I thank you, and we're looking forward to being proactive with the RTC and the new contractor, Veolia. And if you have any questions, please contact myself or Joe Sampson.
Randy, if before you leave, if I may, the transition period that he has spoken to, if a decision's made today, is it an August date?
Actually, the transition will start at the end of this month. Each proposer is required to submit a detailed transition plan, and I believe that transition plan will address Randy's fears, so I'll get with him after the meeting.
Okay, so there'd be a specific requirement as far as communication.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Ross.
Can I ask this, Mr. Chairman? Is there any, I know we don't have contract with Teamsters, but I think it would be okay if there was some communication from the RTC to the representatives of the collective bargaining units. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. We enjoy our conversations that we have with the Teamsters.
Yeah, because I'm with Randy. The last thing we want is the employees to feel left in the dark and not knowing what's going on. And so you guys are very proactive in that regard, and I commend you on that. Thank you for doing that and representing your members. But let's see if we can have that open door policy of communication. I think that just makes sense.
We very much appreciate the leadership of Randy and Joe. We have had conversations with them. Very professional, reasonable people to work with. So very comfortable working with them.
Mr. Sampson, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Joe Sampson. I'm a business agent over the busing, and we currently have the paratransit operators. We're here to acknowledge the awarding of the paratransit contract. We also are a little heavy-hearted at the loss of a friend in paratransit leadership. The loss of a friend is never easy, but there is comfort in knowing that this is not a tragic way that we part, but a change of command, a time when a decision, like in the military, allows others to demonstrate their mettle to lead and allow the interim command to move on to other venues, honing their skills. Thank you, First Transit, for all you have taught us and for being the springboard we needed in our growth in partnership with you. Unions can only exist when camaraderie and respect, along with trust, are present. Eagerly we met and accomplished our goals, always with a handshake. We parted. Even through adversity, the respect was there, during grievances and through arbitrations, regardless of the outcome. So, you will be missed, and again, we want to thank you. To Veolia, welcome to Paratransit. We are aware of your experience in this area before. Things have changed, and in a town like Las Vegas, in the para business, we are still all in infancy. But the good side is that in these employees, now more than any time in history, operators are required to be more technically and tactically proficient in their duties. And that is a highly motivated force of employees waiting to take you to the next level of your watch to greater enhancement of paratransit. The RTC has the big picture through contract and providing resources to accomplish your mission. Veolia, you have the mission to effectively direct and provide on-time service and manage the workforce to their success. For all the days of your contract, and I think that's like 4,015 days. Be quick to praise and slow to admonish. Praise in the open, admonish in private. Lead from the front. These employees are deserving of your respect. The Teamsters are eager to work with you, and we look forward to that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you both, gentlemen. Justice Maupin. Nick, good to see you.
This actually adjusts to my height. Chairman Brown, members of the board, my name is Nick Prompotis. I'm Senior Vice President with First Transit. I have overseen the current paratransit contract for its duration almost 7 years. The services that we provide are personal to me, our drivers, and our entire management team, beginning with our General Manager, Alan Keller. We would like to think that we have the best paratransit professionals in the industry, and we take tremendous pride in what we do in the communities that we serve. I'd like to take a few moments to comment upon the prospective award. At the outset, First Transit is determined not to protest the recommended award. Needless to say, we will continue our quality service under the present contract and will cooperate with any transition process to the new contract. While we sincerely believe that the RTC should award the new contract to First Transit, we appreciate the efforts of RTC staff in evaluating all proposals. That said, we'd like to make a few points that, in our view, would support a different result. First Transit's expertise and dedication to managing this contract has resulted in such an industry-leading passenger experience that we like to think that the contract is viewed as the gold standard in the ADA paratransit industry. Some of our specific accomplishments and highlights include significant notable reductions in passenger complaints, dropping to just 1 complaint for every 2,000 passengers. On-time performance has been driven to over 97%. Productivity numbers have increased to 1.77 trips per hour in climbing. 20,000 miles operated between road calls. Workplace harmony and labor peace aided by competitive long-term wage and benefit package. An experienced and highly functional local management team who all live in the Las Vegas area with over 100 years of experience in managing. And a very involved and active corporate staff supporting this operation, who have been able to respond to dangerous and costly problems for you. One example relates to a major engineering defect, which our engineering department addressed through its technical expertise. As a result, an entire fleet was spared the possibility of serious fire losses, major expense, and potential injuries were avoided. 2 years ago, we were the RTC's recommended winner in the fixed route solicitation. Your incumbent operator made an argument that our price was unreasonably low, and half of the board ultimately paused to consider this argument. 2 years later, we find ourselves making this very same argument. What concerned you 2 years ago ultimately led to a revamping of your solicitation process to validate administrative and technical strategies proposed by interested contractors. Your staff did just that. What they didn't do is place a greater emphasis on fair and reasonable pricing. Pricing still comprised 50% of the scoring in the second round, with little to protect the agency from aggressive pricing. We strongly urge you to ask, is the price fair and reasonable? More specifically, what happens when operating costs exceed revenue? Will a provider still be willing to utilize vital corporate resources required to support the operation? It's your operation, your passengers, your assets, and ultimately your decision to make. We respectfully submit that all of this was inherent in the process 2 years ago and should be part of the process now. We would like to express our sincere gratitude for the privilege of serving Southern Nevada since 2007.
The work that we've performed under the contract is special and important to us here at First Transit. We very much look forward to maintaining and reestablishing our relationship with the RTC in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the board? Councilwoman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I just want to thank First Transit for their leadership over the years since 2007. You have, we were just saying, you're really a class act. And what you've done for setting a standard, I certainly hope to see that standard met by Veolia in this service delivery as well. So your comments are well taken. And I do think we need to look at a standardized process for the transition to protect all of the drivers and to ensure the quality of the service, and that there shouldn't be a loss in service or a loss in the standard of delivery that we've seen and come to appreciate and respect and expect from our service providers. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Giuncaliani.
Thank you. I would echo that as well. I think everybody had a class act all the way around, and I do think that that's because the focus is still on the client, and we can't ever forget that part of it. And I have to say, as a special ed teacher, the two men today that got the recognitions actually said it so much better than I will on this is a very sensitive population, and so the training that goes along with the men and women that drive, all that part of it is so key. And maybe regardless of who the company is, we need to work, and I'm happy to assist with that, to put together a training program for those that deal with special needs and ADA. And I know we sort of talked about that a couple of years back, but never really flushed anything out. I didn't find any true programming out there. So that just would be for down the road. But I think both First Transit, you've been a great partner, and it's a tough area to have to be in. And so Veolia, you've got a welcome back, but you got a challenge to be able to fill those shoes, I think, in the long run. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Tobler.
I would like to also thank First Transit for the work that they've done. I think you've done a great job and have done a lot of good things for our paratransit. And just how you're proceeding forth, I think, says a whole lot about your company. You know, I think with this cost differential, it was vetted out much more painfully, I would say, over a long process, and you've chosen not to go down that route. And I think I would like to hear that, you know, what happens if they do come back, and where are we protected as far as the board, or if they're not able to make it work with their, what happens then with the group that Veolia, if they get it now and then they come back and say, you know, this just isn't working because of their bid?
Well, I certainly think it was the same, we had the same conversation with Fixed Route. There was that concern because the bid came in lower, what would happen? But the contract covers that, covers the RTC, we are protected. And
Just briefly explain to me, because I remember we did have those conversations, but it's been a while. So,
well, certainly if it were apparent right away that Veolia could not perform, we could go on to the number 2, which is First Transit. During the course of the contract, if we deem the contractor to be non-responsive, not able to handle the job, we certainly have an opportunity to go out again. So we've got options before us.
And I'm not suggesting or implying that I don't believe Veolia can move forward with this, but you know, we did spend a lot more time trying to figure out that price differential, and it seems like I still stand by staff, your recommendation. I did before, but you know, I do want to thank First Transit, because I certainly don't want to go through that whole process again. And but I do stand by staff's recommendations. But I did want to go on record and just say that I think First Transit really did step up and do a lot with their contract. And there were a lot of, I believe there was a year or two where you reduced some costs during difficult times. And I think that says a lot about your company. Thank you.
Please.
I would make a motion to accept staff's recommendation of selecting Veolia for the paratransit route.
There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Your last non-consent item is item number 45, which will be introduced by Assistant General Manager M.J. Maynard.
Item 45 is to receive a presentation on the tentative budget for fiscal year 2015 and direct the Department of Finance to submit the tentative budget to the Department of Taxation by April 15th, 2014, as required under Nevada Revised Statute 354.596. The tentative budget, along with a detailed report of the proposed revenues and expenditures, are due to be filed with the Clark County Clerk and will be placed on record at the RTC for review by the public on or before April 15th. RTC personnel request that the board direct staff to submit the tentative budget. Charity Cage, our finance manager, will now present to you.
Thank you, MJ. Good morning, Chairman and members of the
Can
board.
we do quickly with no disrespect, because we're going to lose our quorum, so thank you.
Okay. Yep. My name is Charity Cage, Finance Manager for the RTC, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide a very brief presentation this morning on our tentative budget for fiscal 15. With that being said, I'd like to start by taking a look at revenues. Sales tax revenue projections for fiscal 14 are coming in at about $167 million, which is a 5% increase, over fiscal 13 actuals of $159 million. To remain conservative, for fiscal 15, we are budgeting $172 million, which is a 3% increase over the projected fiscal 14 projections. Motor vehicle fuel tax revenue. The word to best describe our recent prior year actuals, our fiscal year projections for 14, and our fiscal year budget for 15 is flat. We will budget fiscal 15 at $65 million. Our newest addition to the fiscal 14 revenue is fuel tax indexing. The fiscal 14 projection you see here is based on fiscal 13 actual gallons sold at the 3.25 cents per gallon index tax for one half of the fiscal year for 14. Our very first year of revenue collection, or first month, of revenue collection has been reported for January. That revenue came in on budget at a little over $2 million. The fiscal 15 budgeted amount of $50 million is for one full year of the fuel tax indexing revenue. Now moving on to fare revenue. We are projecting a slight increase from fiscal 14 to fiscal 15 due to the addition of Route 120 in the southwest part of the valley, as well as some enhancements to our current service that we're doing, as well as new ticket vending machines that we are looking to procure in 15. Projected ridership numbers reflect a similar slight increase as well, once again due to the addition of Route 120 in the southwest, as well as some enhancements to our current system. As you look at our overall funding sources, you will see reflected in the light blue there the new fuel tax indexing revenue represents 7.3%. That is that $50 million that we just discussed. As you can also see, bond proceeds at 33.5%. That is reflective of the anticipated $230 million that we're looking in bond proceeds for 15. That concludes a look at revenues. Moving on to expenditures. This illustration shows that the largest piece of uses is capital outlay at 64.4% for 15. This is largely due to that new fuel tax indexing construction program. On the next slide, we're going to take a look at what makes up that 21.8% for services and supplies. Our single largest expense in services and supplies is our fixed route contracted services. For fiscal 15, we're budgeting a slight increase over 14 due to, again, to that addition of Route 120 and those enhancements to our current service. Taking a look quickly at what that means for service hours for the fixed route, that is a corresponding increase of about 60,000 hours reflected from 14 to 15. Another significant part of our services and supplies expenses are the paratransit contracted services cost. With the new contract being awarded for fiscal 15, we are estimating a slight savings and are budgeting at $42 million for the year. Fuel is another of our large expenditures. Taking a look at diesel prices as of March 13th of this year, they were at $2.95 a gallon. As of today, they're at $3.03 per gallon. If we take a look at CNG or compressed natural gas, that's $1.16 gas gallon equivalent. Based on this comparison, CNG obviously is a more economical choice. Taking that into consideration, those cost savings that are realized by utilizing CNG, fiscal 15 will be the first year we are projecting to use more CNG gallons than diesel. To summarize our budget, transit operating expenditures, we have a pie graph. 88% is made up of those services and supplies, including those contracted services and fuel that we talked about earlier. Moving on to transit capital program transit related capital program, we're budgeting $52.1 million for 15. Some of the highlights include the Transit Mobility Center that we're looking to construct and then complete in fiscal 16. Also along those lines, for $4.1 million of our will go to our continued bus shelter and safety enhancements program. We're also looking at procuring 80 and purchasing 80 paratransit CNG vehicles, as well as 25 new CNG 40-foot fixed route vehicles. That goes along with that increased usage of CNG, decrease in our reliance on diesel. Our final highlight would be for the transit fund capital budget is $5.5 million that we're budgeting for new ticket vending machines. Looking at our streets and highways capital program, motor vehicle fuel tax program, we're looking at $89.3 million of capital outlay. Sales tax program, $67.1 million. And the big news for this year really is fuel tax indexing at $370.4 million. Debt related to our streets and highways program includes $270 million in outstanding bonds related to the sales tax, and that equates to about $25 million in annual debt service on those bonds. Related to our motor vehicle fuel tax bonds, we have million dollars outstanding, and that equates to an annual debt service of about $42 million. And finally, again, our newest debt program related to fuel tax indexing. On April 1st of this year, we closed a $100 million 20-year bond. In early to mid fiscal 15, we are projecting an additional bond issuance of $230 million for a total of $330 million for this fuel taxing indexing program. That will equate to a little over $26 million in debt service for 15. That concludes our prepared presentation. We can answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Comments or questions from the board? Commissioner June Kiliani.
Thank you. I think 3 of us sat in on the budget hearing, so thank you very much. You did an excellent job with a brief, but still something the public would understand.
No problem.
Much appreciated. And I do think you mentioned that you're looking at transitioning out the old ticket places, and you're still testing that part of it, right?
Correct.
That'll be part of the budget. So if there's no other questions, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion for approving the budget to present. Who does it present to?
To approve the tentative budget.
Just approve the tentative budget, okay.
And direct the Department of Finance to submit that budget.
That's correct. I knew there was something.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. This is the second time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the board, please come forward. First up.
Morning. My name is Sam Santoria, and I am Vice President of ATU Local 1637. Seems as though the RTC is at it again. They found someone else to run paratransit. Does anybody pay attention to what is going on after you split the fixed route? Or better yet, does anybody care? The employees are not just livestock to, the employees are just livestock to you, and they go with the property to whoever bought it. Farmer Keola's, Farmer MV, Farmer Veolia, Farmer First. There are people working in the fixed route, and I found out this morning on Para side, who have been here longer than the RTC has been here, yet they don't get to enjoy a pension as all of you do. They have to worry, will the new farmer take care of me, or will I be sent to slaughter? It's time for the RTC to take control and run fixed route and paratransit. If you are not qualified to do the job, then maybe you should resign and get someone in there to do the job. Is it so wrong for the drivers and mechanics to want job security and a pension after devoting their working lives to the riding public? I don't think so. Last month's meeting showed a video of RTC employees saying how great it is to work for RTC because they balance the work and home life. That's what a job should be, but we don't get that. And please don't tell me we have to negotiate that. I'm tired of hearing all that. It seems that no one cares what happens to the workers. I think that you think you could train chimps to do our jobs. The problem with that would be if you did, you'd have to feed the chimps and give them water, or otherwise PETA would step in and shut you down. We are not livestock, and you need to stop trading us like we are owned. RTC needs to make us public employees. We'll be putting together some facts on privatization versus public to present to all of you in the near future. Also, could someone there please tell us who redacted the documents we received from the RTC, who was responsible for the redactions? And please, Chairman Brown, would you please check as to why the drivers of fixed route do not get a scheduled meal or toilet break? It would be mostly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to our monthly guest speaker at the top of the stairs, is there anyone else wishing to speak this morning? Please come forward, state your name.
Jose Mendoza, ATU President for 1637, and I agree with our Vice President what he said. Today is an example of what perhaps Viola is not going to treat their paratransit employees like MV has treated the current incumbent employees. They have not paid the 401k. There's some holiday pay still that they owe, and we're still dealing with their unprofessional, I guess I could just say they're very unprofessional. The selection by the RTC staff to have them run the Simmons yard is totally, I don't know how they managed to present that to the board. We are disappointed. We are still negotiating, but in the end, somebody's going to be affected, either the operators and the riding public, or through the petition that I sent to the commissioners via email. Hopefully you really take into consideration to terminate the contract of MV. The rumors has it that they have bought out, that they have been bought up. We don't know. If they have been bought out, what happens to the employees that have been terminated already? And also the 401k, the holiday pay. And who do we negotiate again? This is very sad for the workers. We see some good high-paying salary people out here that come and tell the board, approve this, approve that, but yet they ignore the workers. We are the workers. And we bring our complaints to the commissioner, so hopefully in the end, something could be done. I close this by telling the commissioners they should review the free speech policy that the RTC has. I was over there sitting by a pillar trying to give information to our bargaining unit employees with a sign that said shame on RTC. Ally Barton came and told me I needed to leave or go to the flagpole. Somebody from the RTC told them that I needed to leave or go to the flagpole. I requested from Tina an email who this RTC employee is. I could only guess that's Mr. Keating because he's security. I am no threat. I was just out there passing information to our bargaining unit employees, what's going on, what's the status, and yet we get thrown out. And then you got 4 Allied Barton officers making sure that I board a bus, making sure that I'm out of the BTC. This is not the USA in the way I was treated. And the ATU was treated, because I represent the bargaining unit. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
I'm Santa. 2 years ago, when you go back, I'm the one that gave you coal for Christmas. Now, I'll tell you the reason why I'm going to give this statement at the end of it. 1967, 1968, I was in the Republic of Vietnam. I was there during the first Tet Offensive. I met and saw better enemy than what I've seen this commission is. Now, if you wonder why, the reason why, and it's just one of them, is that I've seen a commissioner and I've seen board members get up and walk out of a meeting before a very critical vote comes up and not come back. That's a disgrace. You're not earning your money, and you're not worth sitting in the seats that you're sitting in. And my last statement is that I'm very honored to join the ranks of those that are suing RTC. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm Carolyn. I'm the ATU Financial Secretary, and I just wanted to let you guys know and to thank, yes, I said thank, RTC representatives for coming out to the MV yard. They did come out, they did hear, and it was a focus group, and mainly it was geared for our security. That is what I'm thanking you guys for. You are taking the time to hear what we're saying. It's not just being done here. MJ, I did write down the trees on the Pecos street. So we are looking at potholes and everything else that we do out there. And we'd just like for you guys all to know that we're not just up here complaining, it's real to us. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board?
Yes.
No, you're last.
Oh,
You,
I didn't know
Ms. Shively, you put on your card last, right here, bold letters. Go ahead, please.
Yes, my name is Joseph Campbell. Sorry I didn't sign one of your papers, but it's a real quick question. I don't know if you guys can answer it or give an answer later on. Councilman Ross spoke of about 2 months ago maybe about wages from other cities of other drivers. And I wanted to know how long will the findings of that from Ms. Quimbley will come back, like if it's going to take 6 months, 8 months, a year, or whatever. I don't know if you guys can answer that.
We
but-
can't answer it during this
I know,
portion, but
I
if you
just-
wait afterwards, we'll give you a projected timeline.
That's
if
all I
staff
need to
is
hear.
available.
That's all I need to hear. Thank you.
Right after the meeting, please. Anyone else wishing to be the second to last speaker? Please.
My name is Robert Naylor. I'm the Assistant Business Agent of ATU. I would like to know, every time we come up here, all your people leave. Or you guys sitting there playing on your phone. Like Sister Kiki brought up a couple meetings ago, she brought it up and it's still happening. It's very disrespectful. It's almost like you put us to the side.
And I hope you're not talking about the two that are sitting in front of
No,
you.
I'm talking about
All
the
right,
board.
then try to keep your comments more specific.
The board, there's only 3 of you guys sitting up here. It's very disrespectful. And you guys sit there and play on your cell phones like was brought up every time the ATU comes up. And we sit here and listen to you guys. We give you guys a respect. And we feel like we don't get the same respect. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, we'll pass that microphone.
finally. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Arlene Shively. You know, I only come to these monthly meetings because God tells me to come. I have gone through so much in these years of my life, personally, and then sometimes when I have to get attacked mentally through the newspaper writings, I get most upset. And I came in because I had read about the new transportation plan that was sought in order to move people more freely around Las Vegas. And they were, in the paper it said they were hiring gallows from North Carolina or someplace. And I hit the ceilings. I hit the ceilings every night when I have to dream about Mr. Keating and his bullying, bisexual, bigoted behavior. But that's my own personal thing. And I really don't mind at all because I have gone through so much. In 1943, I was entering Northwestern under quota and restrictive covenants and sitting in the back of the theaters, not in the back of the classrooms. So I'm used to it. But the contract with Gallus, with my little neurons that are left, accounting-wise, and due to the fact that I can't put myself on a government-funded contract, and I had my picture posted so that I could not even ride the public transportation. But of course, nobody paid that any attention, not even the police officers. How in the world can you give somebody who does not live in Las Vegas $2 million to find out how to move us? You know, you can take, Mr. Keating sits up there in the glass house with Mr. Rodriguez and all the other people at 10:30 at night telling me that he's going to prosecute me when he should be telling the tourists how he can move them down the strip more efficiently if he wants to do something with our money. Now, I was really mad about Gallus. Then I come in and I find out that you've gone through this same duel. We don't know who to get to do what. First State needs to go and Viola, oh, we're gonna put, you just went through this. Don't you learn? I'm talking about the RTC, not you commissioners, because everybody knows that you are just elected. You are, quote, what we call rubber stampers of whatever you have to hear after some other people have given you the right to try to treat us like human beings. But everybody has their day. I'll have my day, and I have it every time I come here to see you, and I love you. You are waking up. You're fighting the RTC. Finally, don't you realize what you're working with?
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for those comments. All right. I do have to ask, is there anyone else wishing to speak to the RTC? Seeing and hearing no one, we thank you for attending. This meeting is adjourned.